Good evening, everybody. 6:38 p.m., Monday, December 4th, 2017. We'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Start with our regular announcements. Item number 1, this meeting is being recorded by Cape Ann TV Access Corporation for future broadcast. Meeting is being filmed by volunteers from Cape Ann TV. This meeting is being taped by Board of Selectmen Secretary Debbie Morong for accuracy in minutes. Anyone else who is out there who is recording the meeting is asked to notify the meeting in the chair at this time. And all members of the board and people in the audience are asked to turn off or silence their cell phones at this time. Okay. I'm going to start with a few announcements. First, we have a few folks who passed away in Manchester since the last meeting we had. Patricia Houghton was a longtime Girl Scout leader and an American Legion auxiliary. Carl Nickerson was a lifelong resident, a planning board member, and strong in the First Parish Church. And Robert Gamble, salesman, a longtime resident. And then George Manez, a lifelong resident and initial caretaker and a custodian at Brookwood School.
What's his name?
George Manez. So we will have a moment of silence to these 4 people. Okay, on the brighter side of news, Sue Beckman's not here. That's not on the brighter side of news. But Greg Federspiel is not here. He's our town administrator, and he's not here because he's a grandpa. It was unexpected. Well, it was not entirely unexpected. It can't be that unexpected, right? Yeah, okay. But they weren't expecting the grandson and child to come along quite as soon as they did, but came along today, and so he's not with us tonight. And we're all very pleased about that. Not because we don't like Greg, but we're pleased that he's granddad. Okay. Okay, item 0 on the agenda is if anybody has anything that's not on the agenda that they want to raise. No? All right, we'll go straight to item number 1. Tonight we have Christina Wright St. Pierre, who is our new town clerk. Greg would ordinarily introduce her and tell us all about her, but he's not here. So, Christina, if you could just introduce yourself and tell the members of the board a little bit about yourself. And
Christina St. Pierre. I graduated from college thinking that I was going to be a police officer, so my background is in criminal justice and legal studies. I did an internship at a police department and realized that's not where I wanted to go, so I really focused on the legal aspect of the law. And after graduated early and moved on, became a certified paralegal. I was dabbling in the job market. It's really hard to get a job starting out in that field without a little bit of experience, so I took on a job as a transaction coordinator for a real estate and developing firm. So we worked with new construction projects for marketing and coordinating all aspects from beginning permitting through the sale process and marketing as well. I realized that job, I really enjoyed helping people. I loved the aspect of the procedural and legal and the black and white. But the tough part for me was not knowing what time I was going to get home at night, being a sales-driven position and really liking to help people. It was difficult to work with people through a process and only to have them say, oh, well, we're going to rent for another year or this isn't going to work for us. So when the Essex Town Clerk's position went from elected to appointed, I decided to, after the first round of applicants and somebody decided not to move forward, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. I worked for the Essex DPW as a DPW specialist. I was very fortunate that the superintendent before, Damon Bucci, gave me some excellent experience, whether it be working in the field, cutting the grass. I was in the office doing all aspects of payments receivable, setting up QuickBooks system for a cemetery department, out to doing work in the lab, so I really got a good municipal background in my summer job in high school and college growing up. So that put me back into Essex, and the Essex Town Hall. I was born and raised there, so I was fortunate to be back close to my family, and I've really just loved that office. When I started out there was no computer. I had a typewriter and boxes of documents. Various filing and cataloging systems throughout the years, so I was really able to learn the position from the ground up, taking my time to go through, and found a love for municipal government, being able to help people every day, as that being a main part of, you know, you're the first face in town hall. You are the directory, so I really liked that. When I heard Denise was retiring, I decided, because I really had brought in the office up to the 21st century. The joke is we skipped over the 20th and went right from the 19th to the 21st. I really thought it would be a neat opportunity to see a little bit bigger community, a little bit more formalized town government. Over in Essex, we had a lot of part-time folks working to put it together, but to just really see a municipality driven by more of a full-time and more of a larger government setting. So just a little bit larger, but I was really interested to come in and see how it works over here and be a part of the team. Any questions?
Welcome. Thank you. Well, welcome to town. We're very pleased to have you. And we're looking forward to seeing your face in the window, and it'll be a pleasure.
To make it formal, I'll move that we move to ratify the town administrator's appointment of Christina Wright St. Pierre to the position of town clerk.
Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, we also have to actually appoint her as the town clerk. And ordinarily, so we've typically done those on 3-year appointments. We'd be appointing her effective her hiring date. Sorry. And we have a couple of options. I was thinking that we could either appoint her to a term finishing up June 30th, 2018, and then appoint her for a 3-year after that, or just appoint her for a term finishing June 30th, 2020, which is slightly shy of 3 years, and then get back on the 3-year cycle, the full 3-year cycle after that. And I was figuring we'd stick with the June 30th just to keep everybody in sync. So, thoughts? 18th or 20th? 2018 or 2020?
I'm in favor of 2020, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we appoint Christina St. Pierre to the position of town clerk for a term expiring June 30th, 2020. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the letter in that will get written up tomorrow, and we can all come through and sign it. Welcome to town.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hope you get a little break in between.
You've got quite a household. It's a high school and
Nice to meet
See you
you.
later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, item number 2 will be liquor license renewals. So in our packages, we have a list of liquor license renewals. We have the paperwork on all of these. I want to remind everybody there's a little bit of confusion about number 28. That one's a seasonal, and that one won't be coming up until March or April. So all the others on this list, 1, 2, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 16, 24, 26, 27, 29, 41, and 50 are up. We have all their documentation for them, and all their checks, everything.
So on number 27, I noticed they have the previous manager listed there.
Yeah.
And we just, so I assume that they submitted everything for renewal before last.
Yeah.
The last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
make a motion that we approve the following 2018 liquor license renewals, number 1, 2, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 16, 24, 26, 27, 29, 41, and 50.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alrighty. Okay, item number 3. July 4th committee. We have an applicant for this position. This is Ryan Ackerman. I didn't have him come in tonight because, Cheryl Marshall has talked with him. She was trying to encourage him to come on board. She's strongly in favor of him. And I figured we could talk about it, and if we decided we wanted him to come in for an interview, we could, or we could just go ahead and appoint him.
I happened to run into him downtown this morning, and he was very excited about the opportunities. He talked a lot about going over to the community center on Saturday when they had the Santa Claus walk, and he's involved there, and he said it's an opportunity for me to get involved in the town. So he's very, very, very much ready to jump in.
Okay, so this would be a one-year term expiring on September 30th, 2018. So not quite a one-year term. But so can I get a motion to approve Ryan Ackerman? I'll tell you what, I'll just make the motion. I'll move that we appoint Ryan Ackerman to the 4th of July Committee or the July 4th Committee for a term expiring on September 30th, 2018.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I am going to move a couple of little things around here. Alan Wilson will be coming in to share a little bit in the conversation that we're going to have about one of the things in Greg's report, the votes people. And he was going to come in around 7, assuming that our budget discussion was going to run through there. And I'd like to allow time for him to come in. So, anyway, so on the consent agenda, we have a couple of things. Yes, I can do this out of order. We have our annual proclamation for Robert F. Stanford Day.
Actually, we should check that, because that actually should say Sanford, S-A-N-F-O-R-D.
It does.
Not a T.
It does say that. Did I say Stanford?
In the consent agenda, it has a T in it, okay. That's fine, if it has it on the proclamation,
Yeah.
it's correct in the proclamation.
So this proclamation reads, whereas Robert F. Sanford recognized the value of social gatherings on a regular basis for the seniors of Manchester by the Sea throughout the Manchester Golden Age Club, and set up a trust fund in 1974 for the entertainment and upkeep of the Manchester Golden Age Club, making it possible for seniors to enjoy events throughout the year, such as an annual holiday party, lobster cookouts, and many other activities. The kindness, devotion, and care that the late Robert F. Sanford showed for the senior citizens of Manchester by the Sea should not be forgotten. And so we declare December 17th, 2017 as Robert F. Sanford Day in Manchester by the Sea. Also in the consent agenda, we have a declaration of surplus items from Manchester Fire Department. These are fire hoses and an ambulance stretcher that they are no longer in need of. These are hoses that were no longer useful. They leaked. So we're cleaning out.
I'll ask Deb had asked you to ask Greg or to get in touch with the harbor master and say, harbor master is building a lot of new floats, and the fire hoses along the edge of the floats can provide a lot of protection for the boat and the float, so I'd prefer not to have them gunned out if the harbor master can use them. Yeah.
So do you want that done before we declare them surplus? I think we can.
I mean, it can be
them
declared surplus and just go to
Yep.
a different department.
Yep. Okay, so, any other comments on the consent agenda? All right, can I get a motion to approve this consent agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All righty. Correspondence. So, the neighborly restaurant, we have a number of letters. So we have an ABCC decision for an alleged violation on the neighborly restaurant group. We have a letter from a resident regarding ambulance service.
Could I just point out in that it's an unsigned letter?
Yes. Well, technically, yes, if it arrives by mail, which I believe it did, it has been sent to us. So,
It could be like me if we got the sign.
yeah, that's possible. A letter from Comcast telling us about price changes, very exciting. Resident letter opposing retail marijuana. A letter from the Mass DEP, an award letter for a sustainable material recovery program. What this really means is they're giving us $400,000 to fix up our composting situation, which is nothing to sneeze at. And that's gonna help us out a great deal. Notice the decision from the planning board regarding proposed development of Surfs Village at 0 Raymond Street.
And I have one little comment about that as well, just so the board's aware. In the negotiations with the planning board on that development, the Affordable Housing Trust is receiving $160,000 in lieu of a physical unit.
Oh.
So that money will go into the trust.
So this, I guess I should have looked at the planning board decision or try to look at the entire decision. This portion that's here just talks about the part that's in Manchester.
Yes.
Yep.
Because there's 6 units in Manchester and 3 units or 6 units in Gloucester
I don't
also.
think it's as many as 6 in Gloucester. I think there were a couple fewer maybe, but I'm not sure. The plans evolved numerous times.
Yep.
But yes, their decision is only that impacts our community.
Okay, and also, we have a Mass DOT letter regarding just an inspection report on the School Street and Sawmill Brook Bridge. We regularly get these updates from the Mass DOT.
The one
Okay.
thing on the letter with the ambulance, I know that right now Essex has lost their private ALS service. So we are providing ALS backup to the town of Essex. We're not running all their regular basic life support. I do in some way agree with what's the idea here, that if we're going to go to Essex, that having Essex come and backfill our station with a person while our ambulance is out is certainly a good idea and keeps it safer for our community also.
I think that suggestion should move rapidly through the discussion stage.
All right, so I'll have a conversation with Greg. Okay, anything else on the correspondence? All right, hello, Alan. Timing is awesome. Yes, Adele.
I just wanted in relation to correspondence, I think last meeting I talked to you about the painting of 127. Wondered if the selectmen could in any way get a letter out to the DPW to get
We,
that done.
to the state. You'd
I
want a
beg
letter,
pardon?
you would want a letter to the state, right? For the painting of 127, you meant the lines out past the railroad
Right.
bridge?
It's from the our railroad bridge to the Gloucester Stage Fort Park. The dot
Yeah.
lines are terrible and desperately need to be attended to. We've talked to Brad Hill's office. We've talked to the Democrat in Gloucester's office. We're trying to get the Massachusetts Department of Highways to understand it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
And I just wondered whether the Board of Selectmen was willing to write a letter, support that position. That's all.
Yep, we already wrote the letter, and I signed it, I
Wonderful.
can't remember when, a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I hope it works. I mean, it's a little late now. They won't do it this winter, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
maybe we get on the agenda for the spring. Thank you.
Okay, so, so I'm gonna combine, the town administrator's report with the budget update, and I'm gonna trim out things not related to, stuff that Greg would address better here. So there were two or three things in Greg's report in the budget discussion that he would like some input on. One that we can have a broad discussion on. So the Rotary Club is making an offer to put in an electronic sign to replace the kiosk sign that was used to be down by the pine tree in the town hall common. This would be for putting up town postings. It could be for any number of different things. So the question is, would we support that concept? There's pluses and minuses to it. And I did have one question that we do have to resolve, and that is we have a bylaw which states, and I didn't look up the exact language of it before the meeting. It says you can't have any signs that are lighted in town. And so I think that might mean that an electronic sign would have to be turned off a certain percentage of the day. And then, of course, there's the issue of like, well, do you really want to have an actual electronic sign anywhere in town at night? Does it open up a precedent? Is it? These are the discussions that we need to have. So, anybody have any comments or thoughts?
Well, I think the first issue would be if what that bylaw says.
Yep.
Is gonna pretty much dictate what we're able to decide or not.
I think that it refers to them at night, but I'd have to go back and look.
Make it solar powered.
Do a lot of things. Have it turned off at,
But that would require, unless it was on a timer.
yeah.
I like both designs that the Rotary has suggested to us, and I think it's a great idea. It's a good way to get information out to people. The intersection is certainly an intersection that a tremendous number of people go through in a day, and it could eliminate us having,
Quite as many flashing signs.
yeah, quite as many two wheels flashing signs out on the common saying hydrant flushing starts tonight, or, this particular event is happening.
Yeah. So,
I'd be in favor of moving ahead with it and seeing just exactly, its use going to be so limited by a present existing bylaw that we either have to change the bylaw or drop back a little and figure out how to solve that problem.
I'm also curious as to whether or not this includes the possibility of, interactive, a sign that allows us to put up public meeting postings. So if we ever have a lobby which doesn't have the public meeting postings, if we went to electronic, could they be out there on that board?
If you wanna, see an example of what the flashing looks like, the town of Middleton has one.
Yep.
Is
Right
it
at
the top of the
62
hill
and
at
114.
62 and 114, near their fire department. It's actually, I believe, on the lawn.
The front of the library.
The lawn of their library. So, if I get caught on that red light, I happen to look over and notice, and it's an intriguing concept, as a way to communicate with people. I think when I first was looking at the mock-up of it, my first thought was, okay, so we also know that the comment's gonna get restructured a little bit for the Veterans Memorial, so it'd be, for me, I'd love to see a conceptual of then what the town common begins to look like with both of those concepts. But if you're ever in that Middleton area, it's worth a stop at the red light to see it.
Okay. So I'll forward these comments on to Greg, and we'll bring this back up again with a little bit more data at a future meeting. So the other thing coming up is on the 19th, we have the All Boards Capital meeting. So this is the meeting with Essex Board of Selectmen and FinCom, our FinCom in the schools, discussing capital work that we're going to do in town, and capital that Essex is going to do, our long-term capital plans, and also to some extent the school building project. So what Greg wanted to know is if we had particular questions, particular presentations of data that we were interested in prior to or going into that meeting. Any particular comparisons of bonding information or debt predictions?
For me, it's, you know, my takeaway from that last meeting was that on a personal level, the way that I'm looking at the whole situation has less and less to do with the school operating budget, or even to some degree the proposed amount of what the new elementary school is going to cost. I mean, I'm seeing it somewhere in the range of 35 to 50 million, and that's a big range, but let's just accept it as that big of a range. It doesn't matter where it is in that range, in fact, to some degree, because of the fact that for the town of Manchester and for the town of Essex, recognizing that Essex within the next 5 years is going to be building another school as well, I almost feel like it's, at this point, the question of what are the two towns, what is their viewpoint on where their capital investments are heading, because this school is going to be a nut that both towns have to swallow, and that's going to leave a limitation to some degree on being able to do a lot of other things. So to me, I'm curious as to what the two towns see on the horizon as legitimate capital investments over the next 5 to 10 years. And I would love to hear from Essex what they see. I know there's a long wish list, as there is in Manchester, but can we get some clear point of view as to what realistically they really see? Because that informs a lot. And I think what both towns should be doing is in turn then giving guidance to the school district as to what position both towns are really in. You know, if we to some degree accept the fact that there is going to be a new elementary school, where does that put both towns then going forward with other things that have to be done? Whether it be sewage treatment plants, or whether it be an Essex elementary school, because the debt load's built, and I realize that debt is retiring, but even with retiring debt, you're still creating a much smaller envelope to fit all the other things that I'm hearing both towns want to do. And, it's interesting to go through the school budget. I just think that there's a lot of effort already being placed, and I think they're doing a relatively good job of creating efficiencies. Putting more downward pressure on the school budget, we can hold people accountable. That's not going to pay for what's on the horizon.
So in addition to what Arthur has suggested, I know we can find it in the Finance Committee report, but if Greg could give us a breakout in terms of when debt is being retired and how much that is. I know there's a break year in 22, 23, or is it 23, 24, and then there's another break year when the entire middle school, high school debt is retired.
Yeah.
So, in other words, if we know kind of like what are those breaks, and I mean the 40 and 50,000 or 60,000 are minor ones, but all of a sudden if you start to drop off, a couple 150,000, that becomes a big point for me to look at.
Yeah, he has those, and I believe the first break is at 2024 is the first big break.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I will forward those up to Greg. Also, he wanted a little bit of feedback on what people felt about the notion of trying to aim for the notion of cash-only capital. So this is the notion where instead of doing debt financing for or bonding for things like water pipes and sewer, we move to just using cash for those and then restrict the bonding work to major projects like school building projects. And he said, so we're not quite there. We're close to being able to do that. If we did manage to do that, to go to cash only on our regular smaller capital projects, then we would save something like, I think, $550,000 a year in interest at our current debt rates. So we're within striking distance of being able to do this based on a number of factors. If we are less conservative with our new growth estimates, we've been overly conservative for some years on that. If we were to push more of the water capital over to enterprise fees and do a few other things, we'd be within a few $100,000 a year of going to cash only. So with a little bit of work, we could maybe get there. We would have to do things like increase water fees or sewer fees to pay for more of the water pipes and sewer pipes in the future. The question is, is this a policy that we would like to drive towards, a direction that we'd like to drive in? Is it something that, if so, is it something that we would like to drive towards more quickly or more gradually?
So this is nothing that, in other words, if we said to Greg, we'd like to be able to have this happen in 5 years or something like that, then, because I would be really shy about giving us a big new growth number and then all of a sudden fall 50,000 short. Or, I mean, I always believe that budgeting local receipts conservatively is good, but if we're being too conservative, as he suggested here, possibly of, $900,000, maybe you think conservatively at the range of $650,000 and just try to slowly move in that direction. So if you, was less conservative in terms of estimating your local receipts and a little bit less conservative in terms of your new growth, you might be able to change that, change the needle by 350,000 one year and see how confident you are with that, and then maybe try to move it another you know, up to 500,000 the next year. That's, rather than trying to pump that all at once, it seems to be a, you know, get partway there, be confident that that could happen again, and then maybe push it a little bit further. Just my thinking.
I'd be very careful with the fact that interest rates are as low as they are right now and inflation hasn't hit. I wouldn't want to see this town pursue aggressively the strategy, do what is arguably a right thing from a fiscal management responsibility standpoint, but do it at a time when interest rates are low and inflation hasn't really hit. If in the next few years interest rates rise, inflation rises, we're all of a sudden in this new strategic position at a very suboptimal time, you know, when we could have been using low interest and, you know, lower inflation times to be doing purchasing of things. So I support the intent. I just wouldn't go whole hog, you know, overnight towards that, because I think the capital markets are very fluid.
Timing versus interest rates, okay.
Has FinCom had any conversation yet?
FinCom has had a little bit of conversation about it. They're interested in the notion. They have, in the past, observed the fact that we're more conservative on local receipts. I don't want to put too many words in their mouth. They are, I think, the initial impressions were that they were fans of not paying interest.
Sure.
Sure.
I think we'd all be in favor of saving interest costs. On the other hand, if it means being more aggressive in shifting charges from to water and sewer users from taxpayers, that raises some interesting questions about who is paying and who can afford to pay.
Yep. Yeah. Presumably,
Why did you hang on to that one?
yeah, actually, he may as well, because we're going to be,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
shortly, we're going to be
Two
getting.
people, two mics.
There might be a rush at any second. So.
You're right. That's that's something to be careful of. I would hope that for most people, what would happen is that they would see the cost simply shift off of tax rate spent on debt financing over to enterprise expenses. So the total that they'd be paying out would be about the same between their water bills and their taxes. It would just be
I'm not
shifted.
sure that the two populations are the same necessarily,
You might be right about that. It would bear some analysis.
particularly with respect to sewer, more so sewer than water.
You know, I can't tell you for sure, but I know that I can model it, so I'll I'll spend some time on that. Okay, so I will forward that input up to Greg. Any other comments that folks had on his write-up on budget that you want him to have? I would suggest you just email him directly. And that's going to cover the rest of the town administrator's report and the oh, actually, no, I will make a couple of points. One, some of the newer 25-mile-an-hour signs have been installed. New 20-mile-an-hour signs are to arrive this week and will be installed, and the parking signs, per the list of changes, have reportedly been installed.
Just one question, if I could. Where and when is that December 19th meeting of all the boards?
The December 19th meeting is at the school cafeteria. The the high school cafeteria at 7. Right.
It's not in Essex?
Hmm?
It's not in Essex?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
There's also, yeah, tomorrow night, the school is getting their preliminary budget at their school committee meeting. I'll be going to that. Oh, yep. All right, let's move
One other
on.
thing, after the moderator is done, I know Greg was talking about this at the meeting down at the school, that we need to kind of formulate what our meeting schedule is for the month of January,
Yes,
because the two dates that we would normally have meetings are both holidays, January 1st and January 15th. So the question is, do you go to Tuesday on those 2 weeks, Tuesday the 2nd and Tuesday the 16th? Or
So-
do you stay on Mondays and go Monday the 8th and Monday the 22nd?
I think the proposal right now is to go to Monday the 8th and Monday the 22nd. I thought that that's what people were leaning towards at the all boards meeting. So, anybody have opinions? I'm in favor of the Monday the 8th and 22nd.
I'm good with that.
Okey-dokey. Monday the 8th.
But that's just shifting a week or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just pushing them down.
So it's going to the 2nd and the 4th Mondays rather than the 1st and the 3rd for that month.
And it sometimes ends up being the case that we,
We don't have back-to-back because there's 5.
Yeah. It's a 5 Monday month.
look all right to you? Okay, we're good to that. Okay. All right, so, let's talk about votes. VOATZ, votes. So we had a short presentation from a company that cold called us for electronic voting for municipal services. We have a current contract, but these people were interested in talking to us anyway about some technology that they developed, and they came in and talked with Alan Wilson here and Denise Hamilchuk and Greg Fetishbeil and myself. And they had some interesting things to say. What they were offering was an electronic voting service similar to what we have in town meeting, but based on phones and tablets with an application that they would provide. And for people who don't have phones and tablets, they would provide tablets for the meeting so that and on any given vote, people could use those. The technology was interesting because, well, A, it's considerably cheaper than our current technology, and B, its use can be expanded to support things like polling. So we can generate polls or straw votes for residents in times that are not elections. They use the same application on their phones to vote. And we can get fairly direct feedback using the same mechanism that they would use in town meeting to vote. Additionally, we can use that as a means of getting people to install the application and use the application and potentially increase participation in town meeting. So we wanted to, I'm going to let Alan add comments to this, but we wanted to get a gauge from members of the board to see if there was any interest in pursuing discussions with them and how we would pursue them, and any additional information, what sort of presentations people would like, what sort of additional information people would like. Alan, did you want to add to that, or? Mike?
Not a lot to add. I think that was a pretty complete description. From my perspective, I think what is interesting about it is that it would allow you to have interactive exchanges with voters, not just at town meeting and a town election, but throughout the year if you had issues that you wanted to survey opinion on. It is significantly less expensive than the current technology we're using, and we have heard some criticism of that. Although, by and large, the feedback I've gotten has been almost uniformly positive. People like the electronic voting. They like the fact that it's private, that they're not voting in front of their neighbors. I've actually been surprised how many people have commented on that aspect of it, because I wouldn't have imagined that it was that big an issue. The downside of the technology, I think, is that in order to use it, each individual voter has to have downloaded the app to their phone or tablet, set it up, and be ready to roll. And I think we all came away from that meeting thinking that at the first, maybe the second meeting where we used it, we would have to spend a lot of time, because some people will come and they won't have downloaded the app, and we'll need to get them set up in the process for the first 20 or 30 minutes of the meeting. Huge downside to doing that at next fall's special town meeting.
Yes.
That is
Even-
not the meeting to try this.
And even if we decided to implement it in April, we can count on the fact that there'll be a huge number of voters coming for the first time in the fall who probably won't have got themselves set up ahead of time. So I think we'd be inviting a hornet's nest to implement it in the next year.
So
tend
do
to.
we own anything? I know that was the one thing that we seem to be worried about with the electronic voting tabulators, is not owning anything, that the technology would become extinct
Yeah.
with.
We don't
No,
own
we-
anything.
and-
We are leasing
Yeah,
that technology and the service that they provide. It's a 3-year contract. We're just concluding the first year of it.
No, but I'm thinking with this new system,
No,
do
we
we
wouldn't
own
own the new
anything?
system.
I know
We
with
would
the,
not own
sorry,
anything.
sorry, Mr.
No, sorry,
Moderator.
we wouldn't own anything with the new system.
Do we get someone from the company to come to our meeting to work with our people, like we had from the company that we're using now?
They would support it at the meeting. I didn't get a clear sense, but my impression was that the support would not be as extensive. They wouldn't have the same number of people there, probably, that Option Technologies has had 3 people, including the CEO of the company and 2 staffers. And I'd be interested in what you thought, Eli, but I got the impression they might have 1 person or 2 people, but not necessarily the full complement.
Yeah, I don't know how many people they'd have. I would think it would be more than 1. I would imagine it would be 2 at the very minimum. They did say that they had done a few different large venues with this. One as many as 5,000, but those are potentially some fairly technical people, and another with a church, I think, with 500. They said.
I don't remember which group was the larger. They have used this technology for both the Democratic and Republican state conventions.
Yeah.
And what they report is that very few people had any problem with the technology.
So, my initial notes say, what about our elderly population?
Yeah.
And they do attend
Yeah.
town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be my biggest concern.
Right.
They actually said that the meeting they did for the church group was largely an elderly population, and there was 1 person out of 500 who had a problem with it.
Right.
That's what they said.
We asked that exact same question. And They cited numbers along the lines of something like 78% of the populations statewide have cell phones and could participate. We told them we have to look at this from the standpoint of worst case, what happens for these people. And what they said was for meetings where people don't have cell phones, what they would do is arrange kiosks with tablets so that those people could come up and vote at those individually. So I would, I've found their proposal interesting, and it had some promise to it. I personally would like to see some of these issues more thoroughly thought out and described in terms of how we would manage the actual election or manage the actual meetings if any significant number of people didn't have phones. Then the other thing that I thought was, I also tend to agree that injecting it into this next year would be challenging, to say the least. However, however, what we could do is interleave it, right? We could start to use the technology simply for polling people. We could start to bring it on board and outside of the town meetings and use it to, well, get people to put it out in our newsletter, get people to sign up for the application and start doing some straw polls. So, for example, you're wondering what people's tolerance of debt for things like schools would be. We could presumably start to put out some polls around options for things related to the master plan. I haven't had time to talk to Sue Beckman about this, but I will. And then after we had gotten a number of people, a significant number of people engaged with it, then start to look to move it into the town meeting if we had sufficient engagement, if we thought we could really effectively use it. And then there wouldn't be as many setup issues. So we could maybe ease our way into it.
I'm not tech savvy at all, but it just made me wonder. So if we went to this new program and I downloaded the app on my phone, do I have to go to town meeting?
Do you have to?
Or can I vote from home?
No. Okay,
Not
so.
participate in any of the
Yeah.
conversations? Well,
No,
again, I'm not
no,
tech savvy,
you're
so I don't know.
absolutely right.
But if you're downloading it onto a device, do I even have to go?
A
So-
very good question.
Yeah, so that question did come up. These people are very enthusiastic. So state law says, no, you cannot do that.
I know what state law says.
No.
but-
It's right in
What's
their
the
stuff,
ability?
it says town meeting, in-person and remote participation.
Yes. However, state law says no, and they mean it. And their technology, it is their goal, if possible, to allow people to participate in municipal meetings remotely, if state law were to allow it. But let me finish. But there are a number of technical issues with that. So one is that Alan pointed out that debate is important to these things. So they would have to resolve the issue of how these people could actually participate in the debate. And so we are a very long ways away from that being a possibility.
I think you're missing my
No,
question.
I'm getting there. I know what your question is. The technology is tied to geographical locations, and you have to sign into a particular
That's all I needed.
yeah.
That's what I was asking.
So when you go to the town meeting, you're given a piece of paper that has like a little QR code that's something scannable, barcode, something, which is specific to that particular election. And when you scan it with your application, you are now able to vote at that location, provided you stay within that location, which is,
They basically put a fence around it.
yeah.
And your device
Yeah,
won't work
that
if
was
you're
the
not
question
inside
I was
the
Okay.
asking.
That's the question. I knew you were asking that question.
Okay.
Just wanted
So you
to.
can't go out to the car and vote from your
You
car.
cannot. You cannot go outside of the building because they have to deal with the state and the federal election laws, which means like you cannot do electioneering within 150 feet of the polling place, right? So if you were allowed people to go outside where they could, interact with other people, you'd be in violation of the state law. So even if they wanted to support it just the way we support it for the normal balloting process, they have to geofence them and keep them within the building. They can't let people do anything remote.
And at the risk of sounding like a Neanderthal, I hope that state law never changes on that point.
Oh,
because-
I agree. I just was somewhat playing devil's
Yeah.
advocate, saying,
Yeah.
okay, well, if I download the app, why do I even have to go?
Yeah.
When we
Would
did,
be a question from people.
when we did that not statistically valid survey a few years ago about what do you like and not like about town meeting, one of the most frequent responses from people was, what I like about town meeting is that I come with my mind made up and I listen to my neighbors and I change my vote.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's the point. They are the legislative body of the town, and the legislative body requires debate.
Right, and so I think I go back to how do we help the elderly and process through this kind of application. And we're working hard to reach out to people and to communicate with people in lots of various different ways, and encourage people to attend meetings. And I worry a bit that this might discourage some, because not everyone is interested in technology either. I know that seems crazy, but I do believe, and I just, we're a rising, our demographic population is changing, and I would be concerned that we'd be starting to scare people away with so much use of technology.
And I think there are some things to worry about. I read a statistic maybe a year ago that said in the United States, people under the age of 15 sitting in the same room with each other
And they
are
don't
more
talk to
likely to text than to
That's
talk.
right, that's right. No, you're absolutely, I work in a school, it absolutely is true. So that's, I'm intrigued by it, but my initial note was,
Age.
we've got a demographic that we really need to
Take the-
keep
yeah.
very much in
Yeah.
consideration.
Just sit on that front table and look
Look
at
out.
the people
That's
who
just
are
what
in
I
the
was
town
doing.
meeting, and you know where certain people are gonna be sitting every time, and every time you see them, they're a year older. And as are we,
Just like we,
but that's,
I don't think you can also deny the fact that we've got to keep up some social contacts. We can't do everything electronically in our lives. I mean, there has to be some kind of interplay between human beings, and that is a great one of what town meeting is. And we
Well, I
should-
don't think that would go away under any of under this proposal. It's just a different thing that you'd be using at the meeting to do your voting. Like I said, that was one of the first things that I had a concern about as well, and talked to them about. I think it bears a little bit more, certainly bears a little bit more discussion. So I don't get the sense that people are like, oh no, God no, but they have concerns. So how would you like to proceed? Would you like to have a presentation from them? Would you like to?
I'd love, yeah, I'm curious enough to see it.
yep, I'd be
But I do
interested.
think we all agree that we're not looking at this for the fall or even potentially the spring.
Right.
Yeah.
They did offer to
town
do a
meeting.
demo
Mm.
of the, so we could get a group of people together, us and others, and download the app and actually use it.
I would steer it with a demo in mind and see whether they would do a test project and do it with Susan as part of the strategic planning process.
Yeah.
I would just start there. I'll be bold and say that I'm not eager to hear from them. On the town voting, I think that is just an invitation for a major problem. And there's things about it that go through my head, like what happens if I go to town meeting with the intent to use it and my battery's dead? And am I disenfranchised from voting at a meeting I showed up at, and then I need to go get an alternative device with the vote started? I mean, it's just like, let's just stick to, I don't see it as a problem. I don't know what problem we're trying to solve for.
Well, I think,
I
Well,
think the big
it-
problem is we don't
potentially
get
the
enough.
cost.
Two
I don't-
things.
And then-
One
The
is the
number one problem
cost.
with town meeting for me is that people don't come. Like,
Yeah.
And that's not a technology problem, that's just an apathy problem. And I
Well-
don't need an app to solve that, like, I
You know,
got.
that's the number one problem for me too about town meeting, and I would love to have a discussion, it doesn't have to be at one of your regular meetings, about what we could do to encourage better participation. That said, we have one of the highest participation rates for a town of our size anywhere in the state. I had occasion to go to, actually,
Which is
I went to
amazing.
the Westboro town meeting a couple of years ago
Sad.
to see them use electronic voting.
Mm.
They have 11,500 voters, and their turnout is roughly the same as ours.
We've always been very, very strong in that respect,
Well,
comparatively
I guess
speaking.
maybe my comment is driven by the demographic. I think we're extremely strong among my mother's generation. I think we're atrocious as it relates to my generation and below.
Maybe so,
Agreed.
but I will say that
And
for the past 15 years that I've been going to those meetings, our participation remains, strong across the board. So it's true. I think
It's the same faces.
within that, you're right. It does seem to trend more towards that generation, but still, it's been strong for a long time.
that's why I have a lot of respect for that generation, because they care. And the criticism of my generation, people seem to have other things to do.
I do remember when we had a League of Women Voters here that was very active. We did a lot on getting people out for town meetings and for elections. Signs at the railroad station, signs out by we did a lot of work then, and I think we had a very good turnout as a result. That kind of effort is really almost what you have to do to get people out, I think. I don't know that it will work anymore today, but it did work at one time. But I think you have to get out on the street and almost be a sign holder on that morning, and whatever it is you can do. Because we put notices in the paper, we do all the right things, but it's the very personal, very things at Pine Street and School Street and 127 into Beverly, and those are very crucial things at the time of voting. And it did work, but we just don't have the manpower, or at least the organization that now does that. We have no League of Women Voters here. The one in Gloucester is supposed to cover all of Cape Ann, but we don't take part in that. So it's tough.
Well, and town meetings have become issue-driven as well, as we all know. You get certain articles, you're gonna have 300 or 400 people.
They were always issue-driven.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They're issue-driven, irregardless of the mechanism we're gonna choose to vote with.
But
I
we
mean,
do
some
always know that dogs can get them out.
Best way to test it out.
Yeah, to test that straw poll concept.
I think we'll have a potential issue-driven meeting in the spring with recreational marijuana legislation.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to try this with the spring based on the conversations we've had tonight. But, all right, so I don't want to belabor this too much more, or very much more at all. But it sounds like there is enough interest to generate, to request some sort of demo, and enough feedback that we can give them some points that we'd like to hear them address. And then I'll talk to Sue Beckman about some options for a test project, see if she has thoughts about using that, and then we can put a request out to them.
How much, could I ask you a question? How much do those blinking signs that you put up wheels that, you know, when you were doing road work and so on. How much do those cost per?
I actually don't know.
Well, I'm thinking of those as a way on voting day. There should be one on Pine Street, School Street.
Yeah, but you know what?
And we should be blinking all
On
day
voting
saying,
days,
vote today, or
We've
or
actually done that.
town meeting tonight or something.
We've
Have you done
on
that?
occasions, yeah. And the thing is, you tell people the day of the vote when they're coming home, they're not going to the meeting.
I never saw, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
They're going home and they're having dinner because they have no idea what's at that meeting. And if you have not engaged them far in advance of that on the issues, they're not going to just on an ad hoc basis go to that meeting.
Yeah, we can get those at a fairly low daily rental from the cache that's up in the NERAC cache at the Beverly Airport. That's what we get those. And they're fairly inexpensive a day, and then it costs us a certain amount to have them checked back in to, and then repair any lights that might have burned out, things like that. But overall, they're fairly inexpensive for us to use.
I think it would be money well spent. Try it again.
Well,
Put one at the railroad station, too.
yeah.
You know, the places that people go to and from.
I would say it can't hurt, but I still think that the engagement has to be far in advance and at a different level in order to get significant participation. I think people need to be engaged in the issues to have an understanding of what they are and why they should go, not the fact that the meeting is that particular night. Well, any other thoughts or comments on this or anything else that we've not talked about tonight?
I'm glad we have a new town clerk.
I was just going to say, Mr.
Yeah.
Moderator, you have a new town clerk.
We do.
Yes.
She
She
was
got
here.
appointed and approved this evening.
Oh, good.
She was here,
The winner is?
she was here this evening, very
Christina.
nice.
Christina.
Yep.
Good choice.
I have one thing before, are we like wrapping up?
We're wrapping up now.
Oh, this is like the smallest question. What's happening to the stretcher, the ambulance stretcher, in the fire department?
Well, specifically, I don't know. When they are declared surplus, it means we are allowed to sell them or otherwise dispose of them.
Can we like, this sounds like a crazy idea, can we send it to Puerto Rico? Because I'm sure like they need it.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually.
I think that that's possible. I will,
The chief to at least look into it, yeah.
a stretcher to Puerto Rico.
Or to Houston, like, I mean, I think these
For
places.
somebody.
Be a nice gesture from the town.
Yep.
Okay.
Is this the first town clerk we've had that hasn't lived in Manchester?
I think, well, I don't know. In
Um,
my memory,
Yeah,
yes.
certainly
I
back in,
would say Adele.
when we came in
of mine
1950, there was certainly everybody.
George
Well, at one
Rice.
time, wasn't there a bylaw that said they had to?
Oh, wait, did Lois Len live in town?
They had to be residents of the
She lived in
town?
Magnolia.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
Interesting.
Maybe she
All right, well, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn.
Get a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?